She has been working at the legislature, stopping bad things mostly, and is just dying to take some good things over the finish line. Please join me in welcoming Athena Salman.
Hello, good. Is it morning still? Good morning. It's so good to see everyone this morning. And as I was reflecting on today, I mean, it's wild when you think this all went down only a year ago. Yeah. But here we are brought together by our steadfast organization, Planned Parenthood, who continues to ground this right, continues to fight for this right, advocate for this right. In conjunction, thank you also to NARAL for pulling us together, right? Because we have a large, broad, mighty coalition that will not stop just because the court told us to. I was reflecting on that day, and I think first we do need to acknowledge the hurt. And for me, I was in a very unique position in my life because at that time I had a 5-month-old daughter. And I was sitting there, and I was stuck. I was just so devastated. And I thought, what do we need to do in this moment? And so, my statement to my constituents, my statement to Arizonans, but most importantly, my statement to my daughter, whose future is at stake, was clear and simple. I will never stop until abortion rights are restored in the United States of America. Yeah. And the incredible thing is that there are millions of people in this country who are prepared to fight and to continue no matter what until these rights legally are restored, and not just restored, where they are accessible and able to be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of whether or not you're Black, Indigenous, and a person of color, regardless of whether or not you have a disability, or if you're from the LGBTQ community, or if you're in a rural or geographically hard to get area. When we restore these rights, they will be accessible to all as it should have been in the first place. And I know both Brittany and Jody talked about how one of the fundamental ways, and one of the ways that we achieve this is through our elections. Now, you all know I'm in the state legislature. We have an amazing champion also here, Representative Judy Schwiebert, who's joined us. And we have a lot of people down there fighting for the right to abortion and on reproductive freedom. But you all know that we're in a gridlock because the Republicans still have that majority. Ooh.
Not for long.
But in spite of that, we elected a pro-abortion governor, and we elected a pro-abortion attorney general. And while they still try to pretend like we're the ones on defense, what we saw this week on Thursday and Friday is we are taking control, and we are on offense, and we are going to do everything in our power and everything we can to make sure that Arizonans get the health care that they need. And this is just a warm-up phase. Because once we have that trifecta, once we have both chambers, we keep the governor, attorney general, secretary of state, and sweep the whole thing. Once we have a second U.S. senator, he will do whatever it takes to protect this right for every American. They won't be able to stop us.
That's right.
Thank you all so much for being here today. You are not alone. You are the majority. And on days when it doesn't feel like it, remember this event and remember our history. Every human right was never handed to us. We had to struggle for it. We had to fight for it. And when we achieved it, that is when greatness is born. So we're going to do it again. And thank you so much. I have the pleasure now of introducing Dr. Jill Gibson, an amazing provider here at Planned Parenthood. Please join me in giving her a warm, loud round of applause. Dr. Gibson.
Good morning, everyone. That was so energizing. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I really want to take this opportunity to tell my Dobbs Day story, but before we get to that, I wanted to intro with my less concisely titled Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Night of the SCOTUS Leak Draft Opinion, which also happened to be my husband's birthday. We were out at one of those really, fancy restaurants where you can opt to have the small pours of wine with each of your meal courses. This often leads me to inadvertently drink much more wine than I intend. And it was a perfectly lovely evening until my phone started alerting like crazy. And I have a fairly strict no cell phones at the table policy, but since my kids were at home with the nanny, it seemed appropriate to check the phone and make sure that the house hadn't burned down. And what I encountered was a completely different fire. The leak of the draft opinion indicating that the Supreme Court of the United States planned to strip us of a fundamental constitutional right that I had really believed was untouchable. Some of you may be really surprised that as late as May of 2022, I still thought a right to abortion was untouchable. And I'll admit that was possibly a little naive, but I was naive out of necessity and out of self-preservation and out of a need to maintain hope. Because stripping women and pregnant people of the right to bodily autonomy was an utterly hopeless act. Needless to say, the waiter stopped pouring me wine and seemed appropriately concerned with my emotional breakdown and abrupt end to the birthday dinner. I really shouldn't have been surprised then on Dobbs Day, but somehow I was. After the wine had left my system from the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad leak night, I postulated that the Supreme Court of the United States would see how upset Americans were with this prospect and their proposal and rationally scratch their plan. And even as we, I know, it is laughable. Even as we at Planned Parenthood Arizona thoughtfully planned for a post-Roe reality, and I remained an optimist. Even when we guessed and operationally planned for the decision to be announced on Monday, June 27th, and in anticipation packed our abortion schedules for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday preceding that day to accommodate as many patients as we possibly could, I was still wholly unprepared for the moment on June 24th, 2022, when the SCOTUS website indicated that the court had, in fact, taken away one of the most important protections for women that had existed in this country. The wind literally knocked out of me and my husband had to hold me up. A physician friend and colleague from California had flown in at a moment's notice the night before to help me with the crush of patients we had scheduled for that weekend. She and I headed to the clinic with the impossible task of turning those patients away. We had staff from all of our abortion health centers show up to help in our Tempe center that day. Even staff who'd had absolutely no clinical experience were present. All hands had shown up for an 11th hour pitch to hold on to our ability to do our jobs. Yet when I walked in that back door, I wasn't greeted with the usual pounding music of Beyonce or Lizzo.